Kai Mercer stepped off the shuttle, boots crunching against the dense gravel of Calaxis Prime. The air was heavier here, thicker, like everything on this cursed planet. Deathworlder Academy wasn't named for marketing flair. This place earned its name from the moment you breathed in. Above him loomed the training complex, obsidian towers curved like blades toward the smog-colored sky. The walls shimmered faintly with shield tech, warding off native predators rumored to chew through steel. This was where the best of the galaxy trained. And now, for the first time in its long, blood-soaked history, a human had arrived. Kai adjusted the strap of his duffel bag and walked toward the registration gate. Cadets watched from above, some curious, others contemptuous. He caught the unmistakable rustle of claws against metal, the sharp flick of alien tongues whispering. "That's the human," someone muttered in Galactic Common. "Doesn't look dangerous." Kai smirked. "That's the point." Inside the processing chamber, a six-eyed droid scanned his identity chip. Kai Mercer. Birth. Clearance, Provisional Combatant, Diplomatic Clause for Tur. Welcome to Deathworlder Academy. You are being recorded. Of course I am, Kai muttered. The droid stepped aside. A blast door opened to reveal a tall, sinewy figure in armor the color of old blood. Instructor Ziron, the figure said. Follow. Ziron didn't speak again as they walked. His presence was controlled violence. Not threatening, just matter of fact, like a blade that hadn't yet been drawn. They passed sparring rings, kinetic testing fields, and pressure chambers. Every cadet they passed went silent. They know what you are, Ziron finally said. Kai raised a brow. A first? Ziron stopped and turned. A variable. One we don't yet understand. Kai didn't flinch. Then I guess I'll have to teach you. Ziron's eyes, 6 of them, twitched. Amusement? Approval? Hard to say. Your quarters are at Level B, East Wing. Tomorrow, you're in Simulation Hall 3. No adjustments. You're expected to survive. Kai gave a half nod. I wouldn't have come if I planned to die. The dorm wasn't luxurious. A single pod bed, neural interface panel, and a wall console. The screen flickered to life before he could even set his bag down. Incoming message. Sender, Terran Command Liaison. Subject, reminder, observe, do not provoke. He sighed. They didn't trust him. Maybe they were right not to. Simulation Hall 3 was a coliseum of force fields and shifting terrain. As Kai entered, the other cadets were already suiting up. Scales, fur, chitin, feathers, no two species looked alike. He was the only one with bare skin and breathable armor. A voice barked over the loudspeaker, teams of 4. Terrain randomized. No lethal strikes. Kai waited to be assigned. Nobody moved. Finally, a towering reptilian cadet with acid-green plating stepped forward. Zarn Velthrax. Krex Dominion. Top of the combat class. And not subtle. I'll take the human, he announced. Let's see what Earth brings to the blood table. Kai met his gaze. Team or target? Both, Zarn growled. The sim launched. Terrain shifted to a vertical jungle, gravity pulled sideways, and the humidity hit like a fist. Spread out. Zarn barked. Human, don't slow us down. The first wave came fast, drones with adaptive shields. Kai dropped low, moved through brush, used the terrain. He watched his team flail in brute force tactics. Efficient, but loud. He, on the other hand, was silent. Efficient. One drone flanked their side. Before Zarn could react, it sparked and dropped, its core fried by Kai's makeshift pulse blade, aimed precisely under its vented armor. Zarn turned just in time to see it fall. You're lucky, the Krex snarled. But luck doesn't last here. Kai didn't respond. After the match, cadets gathered in the mess hall. The air buzzed with conversations, mostly in languages Kai hadn't mastered yet. He focused on his protein block until a shadow fell over his tray. Zarn again. You're fast. Clever. But you hide it. Why? Kai set down his fork. Because this isn't a war. Not yet. Zarn leaned closer, voice low and sharp. That's where you're wrong. Everything here is a war. Every breath is a test. And you? You're being tested by all of us. Kai's voice stayed calm. Then study carefully. I don't like repeating myself. A silence spread around their table. Whispers again. A few cadets stared, intrigued. Others, wary. Tell me, human, Zarn said louder now, for all to hear. You ever kill a real warrior, or just simulations? Kai stood slowly. Not aggressive. Not afraid. I don't need to answer that. But you do, Zarn pressed. Because if you're here to represent Earth, we deserve to know what you are. Kai glanced around. Dozens of eyes. His every word now a line in a report. I'm here, he said clearly, to prove that humanity doesn't need to roar to be heard. Then he turned and walked out. Later that night, as he lay in his bunk, the wall console blinked. Incoming message. Sender, Zarn Velthrax. Subject, duel requested. Arena, sanction honor match. Time, 0800 tomorrow. Kai stared at the message. He didn't sigh this time. He didn't hesitate. He simply pressed accept. The honor arena wasn't built for spectacle, it was built for truth. A jagged ring of stone and alloy framed the space, surrounded by towering observation decks where cadets, instructors, and off-world diplomats gathered. The combat floor shifted textures beneath your feet, earth, steel, sand, testing your balance and instinct at once. Above it, glowing glyphs displayed the match, sanctioned, recorded, irreversible. Kai stood in the prep chamber alone. No coach. No team. Just his own reflection staring back in the curved mirror of his helmet. He didn't wear full armor. Just the lightweight Terran FlexWeave bodysuit, reinforced at joints but leaving mobility free. In his palm, a practice blade, a standard-issue 1-meter dull-edged training weapon. It looked like a toy in the dim light. His console pinged. Status, opponent ready. Zarn Velthrax, Krex Dominion. Terms, non-lethal. Surrender or incapacitation. Kai exhaled. Not nervous, centered. Focused. He stepped into the corridor. The pressure door hissed open, revealing the arena beyond. A low hum of anticipation echoed from the crowd above. The moment he crossed the threshold, the floor solidified into obsidian glass. Across the circle, Zarn stood like a siege tower, 8 feet tall in full Krex battle gear, dual blades magnetized to his arms. His breathing came slow and steady through his rebreather mask. Ceremonial. Intimidating. Let the record show, Zarn boomed, voice carried through the arena speakers, that this duel was requested by the Krex to confirm the merit of the Terran species in combat. Should the challenger fall, the record will reflect humanity's place among Deathworlders. Kai's voice cut in, quiet but clear. And if I win? Zarn paused. Then your kind will be feared, and respected. A tone rang out, signaling the match. No one moved. Kai stood motionless. Watching. Measuring. Zarn lunged first, predictable. A 2-strike sweep meant to test balance. Kai ducked under the first and pivoted with the second, letting it graze air beside his head. He didn't swing back. He waited. Zarn advanced again. Heavy, fast, confident. Blade clashed with blade, sparks igniting with each blocked blow. Kai deflected each strike but never countered. It wasn't hesitation, it was patience. The audience began murmuring. Some confused, others restless. What is he doing? One cadet whispered. Why won't he strike? Kai heard none of it. He saw only patterns. Krex combat was aggressive, reliant on overwhelming momentum. It was taught as dominance. The moment you faltered, they pressed harder. Kai's plan wasn't to match brute force. It was to break rhythm. Zarn came again, this time with a downward feint into a sweep. Kai jumped, stepped sideways, letting his blade graze Zarn's exposed flank. Not deep enough to wound. Just enough to mark. The first contact. Zarn snarled. Mocking me, Terran? No, Kai said. Teaching. Zarn roared, real fury now. He charged with reckless speed, blades flashing. Kai let instinct take over. He dodged, twisted, deflected, never wasting motion. He fought like water, flowing around the storm. One strike to the leg. One to the ribs. One to the back of the shoulder. None lethal. All intentional. Each one exposed a gap. A mistake. By the seventh exchange, Zarn was breathing hard. Kai wasn't. Then came the breaking point. Zarn lifted both blades for an overhead slash, full power behind it. Kai stepped forward instead of back, inside the arc, and rammed the butt of his practice blade into Zarn's solar plexus. The Krex dropped to one knee. Silence. Kai didn't finish him. He stepped back, blade lowered. Surrender, he said. There's no shame in it. Zarn's chest rose and fell, rage fighting against reason. Instructors watched, unmoving. Rules were clear: if Kai struck again, it could be over. If he didn't, he risked the match continuing. But the message had already landed. Zarn dropped his blades and touched his forehead to the ground. I yield. The arena remained quiet. For once, even the spectators weren't sure how to respond. The match ended. The floor shifted back to neutral. Kai turned and walked away, not victorious, resolved. Later, in the observation tower, Instructor Ziron reviewed the footage. Another senior officer leaned in. He didn't dominate. He dismantled. Ziron nodded. More importantly, he didn't escalate. He deconstructed aggression without becoming it. What's more dangerous than a violent human? The officer asked. Ziron's eyes twitched. A controlled one. Back in his quarters, Kai opened his console. Incoming message. Sender, unknown. Subject, rule number 12 is real. You proved it. He smirked. Close the console. Lay back. The rule, once whispered by veterans and dismissed as myth, had just become official. Never challenge a human student. The corridors were quieter now. Not silent, but different. Kai could feel it in how cadets stepped aside, how their gazes lingered longer, sharper. Some nodded. A few looked away. The duel had spread beyond the academy. He saw the headlines on the Galactic net stream that morning. Terran cadet defeats Krex warlord heir without a kill shot. Human precision or political theater. Experts debate the implications. Kai didn't care about the headlines. He cared about what came next. Instructor Ziron summoned him to the war room that evening. The chamber was lined with star charts and projected simulations, flickering across the curved glass walls. When Kai entered, Ziron didn't speak right away. He stood facing the stars, hands folded behind his back. Finally, he asked, "Why didn't you finish him?" Kai shrugged. Didn't need to. That answer is political. Kai turned, facing him. No, it's practical. If I had, I would have proven every fear about humans right. Ziron slowly turned. And instead? I proved we know when to stop. Ziron considered that. You do realize you've changed something fundamental here. I wasn't trying to. I just didn't want to be the reason the door slammed shut behind me. Ziron tapped a screen, pulling up footage of the duel. Freeze frame, Zarn kneeling, Kai standing above him. This moment will be studied across 100 systems. You taught a lesson. Whether you meant to or not. Kai nodded. Then let it be the right one. 3 days later, he was invited to speak in combat ethics, a class normally reserved for second-year cadets. The hall was crowded, species packed wall to wall. Kai stood at the front. No podium. No notes. Just eyes watching him from every angle. "Let's get this out of the way," he began. "I'm human. You've heard the stories. You've seen the footage. You think you know what we are." A murmur passed through the hall. "We come from a world that tried to kill us in every way it could. Storms. Predators. Diseases. Ourselves. And we survived. We got smart. We got angry. Then we got tired of fighting, so we learned when not to." He paused, letting that hang. "Strength isn't just muscle or speed. It's timing. It's knowing when to act, and when to wait. You want to know the scariest thing about humans? We're patient. We'll let you think you've won, right up until you don't." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. That's what you saw in that arena. Not restraint. Precision. He stepped back. "Any questions?" "None. Not one." Later that week, he was walking toward the mess hall when he noticed a group of cadets gathered around a training terminal. Zarn stood at the center, giving orders. Not barking, leading. When Kai passed, Zarn turned. There was a moment of silence. Then Zarn approached. For the first time, no tension in his steps. No aggression. "You were right," he said simply. "Strength isn't just power. It's control." Kai raised a brow. "Didn't expect that from you. I wouldn't have said it before. But I've fought hundreds of battles. I never learned as much as I did in one loss." Kai nodded once. "Losses teach better than wins." Zarn looked him in the eye. "You earned something rare here. Not just respect. Fear. And both are useful. But be careful, too much of either, and you'll be isolated." Kai's voice was quiet. "I've been alone before." Zarn hesitated, then offered a hand. "You're not alone now." They shook. The moment passed, and something shifted in the Academy's core. Weeks turned to months. Kai excelled in tactics, negotiation, xenopsychology. He adapted fast. Too fast, some whispered. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. His name began appearing in simulation rankings, debate logs, and leadership reports. Then came the unexpected. A message arrived from the council liaison. Subject: observation report complete. Decision: Terran enrollment to continue without restriction. Status: Kai Mercer, reclassified as standard cadet. No diplomatic oversight required. He read it twice. Then once more. It was over. No more handlers. No more surveillance tags in his meals. No more whispered audits. He was no longer a test. He was just a student. That night, he returned to the arena. Empty now. Cold. Just the soft hum of dormant systems and shadows on the walls. He stepped into the center, looked up at the glyphs overhead. He thought of Earth. Of his parents. Of the message he was never supposed to deliver, but did anyway. The last rule. Not one written in ink or programmed into droids. A rule that lived in memory. He spoke aloud, not to anyone, just to the room. Never challenge a human student. He let it echo. And then, with quiet finality, he turned and walked out. This time, no one stopped him. The message came at dawn. No fanfare. Just a single ping on Kai's console. From Galactic Council Liaison Command. Subject: mandatory appearance, Kai Mercer. Location: orbiting Council ship Veritas Prime. Time: 1400 Standard. It wasn't a request. It never was when it came from the Council. Kai stared at the screen for a long moment, then dressed in regulation blacks. No insignia. No armor. Nothing that screamed power or pride, just presence. Veritas Prime floated like a blade above Calaxis Prime, its curved hull cloaked in diplomatic shimmer. Inside, light seemed colder, time slower. Kai stepped into the hearing chamber, a circular room of tiered seats, each occupied by representatives of the core worlds. Faces from every corner of the galaxy watched him from behind glass panels and translation filters. In the center stood a lone platform. No desk. No protection. Just a place to stand and be judged. He walked to it without hesitation. A voice filtered in, toneless, processed. Cadet Kai Mercer, you've been summoned for clarification of your actions, influence, and intentions at Deathworlder Academy. Kai didn't respond. Not yet. Another voice, sharper, older, spoke next. A surreal delegate, her gossamer wings folded tightly behind her. We've received dozens of reports. Some say your presence has shifted the balance of Academy behavior. Cadets copy your tactics. Instructors debate your restraint. Entire factions reconsider protocol. That was never my goal, Kai said. But it happened, said a Krell representative, thick-necked and draped in ceremonial chains. A human walked into our most controlled environment and changed its rhythm. Even your enemies now emulate your approach. Kai tilted his head. So, the problem is that I didn't fail? A murmur rippled through the delegates. We're not accusing you of wrongdoing, said the voice again, calmer now. But the political consequences of your actions have already begun rippling across the sectors. Change breeds instability. Instability brings opportunity. Some races want to recruit more humans. Others demand your removal. Kai's eyes narrowed. You're afraid of what comes next. That hung in the air like static. An older delegate, gray-skinned, eyes like obsidian, leaned forward. Are you proud of what you did? Kai took a breath. Proud? No. Satisfied? Yes. Explain. I did what no simulation, no threat assessment, no lab study could do. I showed them we don't need to conquer to command attention. We don't need to kill to win. I didn't rewrite the rules. I just followed them better. Silence. Then the elder spoke again. Your restraint was not weakness. No, Kai said. It was choice. Hours later, after deliberation chambers sealed off the council, Kai sat alone in a waiting room that felt more like a cell. No windows. Just gray walls and the subtle pressure of being monitored. He leaned back in the chair, eyes closed, replaying every word. Not out of regret, but anticipation. Finally, the door hissed open. A figure stepped through, female, humanoid, dressed in diplomat gray. She held a data pad, tapped it once, then looked up. They've made their decision. Kai stood. And? She gave a small, unreadable smile. You're not being expelled. Nor elevated. They've chosen observation. Again. Kai blinked. So nothing changes? Oh, it changes everything, she said. But now they're watching to see what else you change. You've been cleared to continue at the academy. But unofficially, you're no longer just a student. What am I? A precedent. Back on Calaxis Prime, the mood had shifted once more. In the weeks after the duel, cadets had kept their distance. Now, they approached. Not with challenge, but with questions. Tactical inquiries. Combat theory. Even diplomacy. Kai didn't always have the answers, but he gave what he could. He didn't posture. He didn't lecture. He simply shared. One evening, while running a low-gravity training drill, he spotted Zarn standing at the far edge of the field, speaking to a group of new recruits. The Krex warrior noticed him and waved him over. These ones don't believe a duel can end without blood, Zarn said. Told them to ask the Terran. Kai chuckled. Depends what kind of victory you want. A younger cadet, skin like molten bronze, frowned. What other kind is there? Kai crouched, drawing a line in the dirt with his finger. There's a win that ends the fight. And there's one that prevents the next 10. The recruits stared at the line. Something shifted behind their eyes. Understanding. Zarn grunted. I still don't like how you fight. You're not supposed to. But I respect it. Kai nodded. Good. That's enough. By the end of the semester, Deathworlder Academy had changed. New policies emerged. The honor arena rules were revised. Debate courses included Terran logic models. And for the first time, the Academy opened applications for human instructors. Kai remained in the middle of it, not a leader, not a symbol, but something stranger. A gravity well. Drawing attention, influence, imitation. One night, he stood alone again in the arena. This time, not to reflect, but to prepare. A shadow stepped beside him. Instructor Ziron. Council still watching? Ziron asked. Always. You're being studied by history. Kai smirked. Let them study. I'll keep showing them what humans are made of. Ziron said nothing, but nodded once. Then left him there, under the arena lights. Kai looked up at the silent glyphs above. He thought of the cadets, the council, Earth. And for the first time, he felt it fully. This wasn't just a test anymore. This was legacy.